Hello, families and community. This podcast has been created to share an overview of the progress on the demographic study and the redistricting process. The demographic study, which was phase 1, and also the eventual redistricting process, phase 2, were the topics of the June 8th Student Services Committee meeting. We were able to get an update on the 10-year enrollment projections from that study, and they are underscoring the need for redistricting at the primary level. What we continue to see is enrollment increasing at Wexford Elementary School, and our space is being utilized fully to deliver the educational program. So with increasing section sizes and enrollment, that necessitates the need to implement redistricting for the 2021-2022 school year, which would result in the shifting of some of our students and staff across the K-3 schools to ensure equity in that program delivery. We had previously confirmed the timeline shown here as the pathway to redistricting, which would allow for a carefully thought out and well-designed plan based on those recommendations of our demographers and also the insights of our community as we plan for that redistricting process. With the study data completed and readily available, we can begin the process of formalizing a recommendation come the fall of 2020. This would allow us a full year of transition activities and logistics and planning during the 2020-2021 school year so that we are able to implement that plan in the 2021 fall. So just to reiterate, there will not be any redistricting for the upcoming 2020-2021 school year. It would be 1 year delayed from that we would actually see the plan come to fruition. During that October 7th Joint Operations and Student Services Committee meeting, we were able to achieve consensus on the dates and the timelines. You can see them reflected here again with the demographic study kind of checked off the list in terms of the 1920 work. We are now starting to focus on the redistricting process and the design of scenarios for the primary level for consideration. A study had been conducted in 2016 by Thomas and Williamson and Davis Demographics, and it's really been confirmed, that work, even within the 2020 study. So we've seen that the overall population of our community has continued to increase, and in the past decades, a majority of that population was in Richland Township. Over the last several years, that has shifted, and Pine Township now has a greater overall population. And while the overall K-12 enrollment trends have remained stable across the district, we are noticing that there are shifts in population, particularly within our K-3 schools, where our population is shifting from east to west and increasing the enrollment at Wexford Elementary. And so given those current school boundaries, Richland has experienced a 5-year decline, and Hants has had some fluctuation year to year, but continues to see the lowest student enrollment of the primary buildings. And as these changes have occurred, the district has been monitoring the capacity of each school and considering the impact of enrollment on our ability to deliver the programs in a consistent manner. So we have shared this rationale for redistricting in our initial podcast, which was following the October 2019 committee meeting. But again, those increases at Wexford Elementary School and the capacity of the building to absorb those increases in the number of student sections is being challenged significantly, with the building unable to sustain the growth that we will see in the future years ahead. So starting in the 2021-2022 school year, if that enrollment trend continues and the need for additional sections continues, we will be relocating the usage of rooms outside of places where they have been designed. So for instance, we want to maintain an art room to deliver that programming without needing to convert that to a classroom, etc. So our goal is to ensure that that program delivery and optimization of our school spaces are working in tandem to produce the best outcomes. Based on the study that we just conducted, we feel very confident that any adjustments that are made for the 2021-2022 school year can remain in place for a longer period of time, given the stability projected at the district level for the next 10 years out. On the next slides, we're going to look at that 10-year updated enrollment projection, as well as the grade level section projections for the upcoming school year, which you can see has an impact on that room utilization, particularly at Wexford Elementary School. On this slide, you can see the enrollment for the 2019-2020 school year, followed by the projections for the subsequent years. And these 10-year projections depicted here demonstrate that continued increase in enrollment at Wexford, with the building hitting a peak in the 2023-2024 school year, and then that remains steady over the years projected ahead. In comparison, you can see that the enrollment at Hants and Richland are going to decline slightly starting in 2022 for Hants, but then remain stable as they look across the next 10 years for those buildings. So knowing that we have the capacity at Hants for additional sections to optimize the use of that building would help us ensure consistent programming across the schools and allow us to shift the students strategically into that enrollment zone to benefit the entire system and the students that we serve. So this could mean that there are shifts directly from Wexford to Hants. It could also mean that there are shifts from Wexford to Richland and then from Richland to Hants. There are multiple outcomes that are possible. However, each of them will lead to the long-term benefits of being able to deliver our programming in an effective and efficient manner. To illustrate the impact of increasing enrollment and the building capacity, this slide displays the number of homeroom sections at each grade level at Wexford. So in gray at the top, you can see that we had a total of 20 sections at Wexford in the 2016-2017 school year. And at that time, the overall building enrollment was 413 students. In comparison to that, we had 24 sections in the 2019-2020 school year. So if you think that's 4 more teachers, 4 more classrooms, and we had to increase the other staff positions such as special area teachers to deliver those educational programs. As we look to the current enrollment and then also the projections for Wexford, we can see the potential of adding a 7th section of kindergarten, and we have already added the 7th sections of both 1st and 2nd grade based on the enrollment numbers that we've gained to date. And we do see that number potentially increasing then from 26 to 27 if we add that additional kindergarten section. And so that is 6 or 7 more sections more than were in place in the 2016-2017 school year. So that illustrates that growth and how it is happening so rapidly in the Wexford area. We have been working with Mrs. Gustafson and have identified classroom moves to support that increase in the 2020-2021 school year with the redesignation of spaces throughout the building so that we are able to still deliver the programs in the way that they were designed. However, as we've discussed, come the 2021-2022 school year, it will be difficult to absorb any of those increases, and we'll have exhausted the facilities and the spaces that are there for our kids to learn. So as an example, for this upcoming year already, we needed to shift what was the book room, which had been in a full-size classroom, to the back of the library to create additional room for a 2nd grade section to be added to the building. And so that is one example. Another is there was a full-size classroom utilized for the Gifted and Talented Education program in 2019-2020, which will be converted to a 1st grade room. And so there are a number of other dominoes similar to that, which spill into the other spaces within the building if we continue to add sections. So as you see here, these are the boundaries that are current, and they have been in place since 2012. This map was taken from the online enrollment application, which we have housed on the Pine Richland website. And so that last demographic study in 2016, having updated that now in 2020, we're able to really see and leverage the projections, and we'll be able to update a map like this to reflect new enrollment zones for our students. And it cannot be understated that there is a balance here of the art and the science of redistricting. So what we continue to experience as the story of our community's growth and enrollment trends, we are now seeing matched by these statistical projections that have been provided to us and are able to plan and feel very confident in what that looks like. We have been engaging with the demographer over the last several weeks to really ensure that those numbers and the story and the things we're experiencing are also hanging together. So we need to really consider what is uniquely Pine Richland in terms of factors. And so apart from just the typical traditional markers that we would use for redistricting or demographic projections, such as birth rates and the in and out migration of families and students, There are cohort survival ratios, kindergarten enrollment, and we look at the planned and existing residential developments and the rates of build, which are projected for each of those. And there are over 400 study areas considered by our demographers. So the sophistication that they have and the ability to geocode students to a particular home and to really understand how the age of the homes, the yield of the students from those homes that are anticipated, and those which have happened in years past, can truly help us to represent the neighborhood contributions from each of those study areas and how that impacts our overall enrollment. So it has been nothing short of fascinating to watch the figures and to understand the narrative our community has. And so while we have no crystal ball to look into the future, this is the best possible projection that we have to look at in terms of our enrollment. Shown on this slide are some of the several criteria to be considered in terms of factors for our eventual decision. So the concepts shown on this slide are meant to be a list of all potential considerations, which we discussed with the board on June 8th. Only some of those considerations can be included as factors in the final decision. Some of them are in direct tension and opposition with one another. So those criteria that are in bold are those which around consensus was established at the board meeting in terms of talking through the priorities, those which should rise to the top of the list when we're creating those scenarios for us to consider. So as previously mentioned, we want that redistricting scenario to sustain and reflect at least a minimum of 5 years to be viable. So we would not want to be revisiting this decision again in the near future. We would want it to last at least 5 years. And it's critical to understand that as a part of that, we need to consider the new housing developments that are going in with a large number of homes and a significant impact on the enrollment while they might not have students living in them at this moment. So while we design our possible redistricting scenarios, the very first year of redistricting will not depict, in essence, the ideal model of enrollment balance across the district, because we would be growing into that model and proactively planning so that we can ensure sustainability and also longevity of the decisions and the redistricting scenarios into the future that we create. An example of that is Laurel Grove, which is that new development being built across from the high school, and factoring that into the decision, because those students who will one day occupy those homes while they're not in attendance in that first year of redistricting will need to be factored in so that we can plan for them. So that's just one example of how new construction will be considered in these planning moves. And when shifting the population, we need to also think about, the number of students who will be ultimately impacted or effective, and whether it's beneficial to make fewer big moves. So maybe shifting an entire neighborhood or a chunk of a neighborhood, et cetera, versus small moves. So we wouldn't want to necessarily be taking singleton roadways in various areas. What we came to consensus on with the board was to look at simplicity. So looking at those bigger moves, fewer big moves, to understand what some of those possible scenarios could look like. And we also, of utmost importance, want to make sure we're able to optimize our facilities utilization to make sure that those programs are delivered in an equitable and consistent manner across all of our schools. So optimization of programming and facilities will help promote that consistency. And so it comes to the surface as one of the primary criteria that we want to consider. So we will be giving this list of prioritized criteria to our demographic and planning partners to assist in the creation of 2 to 3 options for consideration. While we are creating these options, it is not healthy to create multiple scenarios. We want to focus on the priorities first. That's why we defined them prior to going into the redistricting scenario design, so that we allow those prioritized factors to be the deciding points for our line drawing, if you will. We will work collaboratively, and we hope to really embrace the community building opportunities and really carefully think through the transition of our students and staff to the new buildings that they eventually would be joining. So we will put effort into that process, and the transitioning component will reflect multiple activities and layers of supports. It's important to note that we do not believe redistricting ends with the drawing of the new lines. It really begins with the drawing of the lines with a focus on actively managing that tradition. So the planning activities that we will have in place will include things like introducing the students and acclimating them to their new building through tours, connecting them with student buddies, ensuring that school counselors are able to speak with the current students as well as those who will be transitioning, and that we have connections among the new counselor to the students who will be shifting into that building, transition group discussions, and of course, we will support families and offer guidance so that they understand how to talk with their children about providing these supports and staying positive with regard to the shifts that will occur. And if the past few months have told us anything, as we've faced this global pandemic, we know that our students and our staff are resilient, and that goes for our K-12 building. They've really demonstrated their unwavering commitment and dedication to ensuring the continued education of our students, and we are proud of all of our schools, the staff members, and the educational outcomes which they produce. And we know without a doubt that we will be able to effectively manage the logistics and support the students to assist them in making these eventual shifts in school assignment. As we shared previously, we acknowledge that this topic can cause feelings of uneasiness among the school community and our parents and students, although we are all proud to be a part of Pine Richland. We do know that we have high levels of satisfaction and engagement based on those surveys we conduct each spring, and that our programming across the district in K-3 is outstanding and becoming more consistent and better coordinated. That is thanks to our academic leadership council members, our principals, as well as multiple processes in place for common assessments, the adoption of new resources, grade level planning, curriculum alignment, etc. Have a page dedicated to redistricting and demographic and feasibility updates, and we will share additional podcasts, electronic updates, and information through school board meetings as we move forward throughout this process. We really thank you for taking the time to view this podcast and encourage you to watch it again and direct others to this source so that they can gain that information firsthand, and look forward to engaging with you over the next year as we plan for this important transition and safeguard our educational programming for the future of our district. Thank you very much.